And welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We get the rare opportunity to listen from a Mahabhagavat devotee, a Mahajan, Srila Prabhupada, describe the teachings of Mahajans, and altogether it's very, very powerful and very potent. This is the way of spiritual progress in this age that we're living in. This is the way to get attached to Krishna, and to learn to get attached to Krishna means the more you know about him, the more you get attached to him, because he's so wonderful. He does inconceivable, wonderful things, and he's inconceivably beautiful and inconceivably smart, inconceivably powerful, inconceivably famous, inconceivably wise, and inconceivably renounced. So, now in modern day culture, everybody's worshiping the latest pop star, singer, or dancer, musician, or athlete, or politician. Krishna's got it all. He's all things rolled into one. Okay, so now Krishna himself, the original form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything, and including knowledge, is going to instruct Uddhava, one of his most intimate devotees. We are able to hear and understand a person, a teacher, depending on our relationship with that teacher and person. There's a saying that a first-class servant is one who can understand the mind of the master and then do what the master likes in the way that he likes it without being asked. Second class, gets an instruction and then immediately does it. And third class will do it or not, or sometimes not even not, or not do it properly. So we're hearing from a first-class devotee about first-class devotees, and now we're going to hear directly from the Supreme First-Class Person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, Sanatana Goswami is one of those Mahabhagavat devotees, and he wrote a glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we're reading from. It's called Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. How are you? You're doing a lot of service. So what?
A long time I haven't been able to come.
Time is going by so fast, I didn't even notice. Hare Krishna. Okay, Sanatana Goswami Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, and it goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Duditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mandistadaga Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chochatakada hanamun chagada chinmam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we've reached the 7th chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Krishna is preparing to depart the planet. He's been asked by Lord Brahma and the demigods to come and remove the burden of the earth. The earth is capable of a lot of burden, taking a lot of burden, but sometimes it gets overburdensome, and then Krishna has to come. And when the demons and the demigods come there from the higher and lower planets on the earth to fight it out, that's a burden that the earth can't handle. These are big guys fighting it out. So Krishna has to come and make the arrangement. So he's just about ready to leave. He's already been given, the hint of his, I don't want to say walking orders because Krishna is the supreme, but Brahma says, okay, thank you so much for relieving the burden. If you want to go, you can go now. Like that. And so Krishna is sitting there, and Uddhava, who is very intimate servant of Krishna, he understands the Lord's mind, and he goes to where the Lord is, sitting underneath a pipala tree, and Krishna instructs him. So here we are, summary of chapter 7, Uddhava, the beginning of Uddhava Gita. It goes for quite a few chapters. As described in this chapter, the Supreme Lord Krishna replied to Uddhava's prayerful entreaty that he be allowed to return with him to his abode. Krishna advised Uddhava to take to the renounced order of sannyas. And when Uddhava showed interest in more elaborate instructions, the Lord further described the Avaduta's account of his 24 spiritual masters. After hearing Uddhava's prayerful request to be taken back with him to the spiritual world, Lord Krishna informed him that he was indeed desirous of returning to his own personal abode because the purpose of his descent had been successfully fulfilled and the misfortunes of Kali Yuga would soon beset the earth. He thus advised Uddhava to take up sannyas by fixing his mind upon him and establishing himself in theoretical and realized transcendental knowledge. The Lord further instructed Uddhava that while remaining untouched by contamination and compassionately disposed to all beings, he should begin wandering throughout this Haribol Narjan, Hare Krishna. He should begin wandering throughout this temporary world, which is simply the combined manifestation of the Lord's illusory energy and the imagination of the living entities. Uddhava then stated that renouncing material things in a spirit of detachment is the source of the highest auspiciousness, but such renunciation is certainly difficult, extremely difficult to accomplish for living entities other than the devotees of the Supreme Lord, because they are very attached to sense gratification. Uddhava expressed the need for some instruction by which foolish persons who misidentify the body as the self can be convinced to carry out their duties in accordance with the order of the Supreme Lord. Even great demigods like Brahma are not completely surrendered to the Lord, but Uddhava declared that he himself had taken shelter of the only true instructor of the absolute truth, Lord Narayana, the all-perfect, all-knowing master of Vaikuntha, and the only real friend of all living entities. Hearing this, The Supreme Lord replied that actually the Jiva soul is his own guru. Within this human body, the living beings can search out the Supreme Lord by positive and negative means and ultimately achieve him. For this reason, the human form of life is most dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this regard, Lord Krishna began to describe an incident, an ancient conversation between a Brahmana Avaduta and the great king Yadu. The son of Yayati, Maharaj Yadu, once encountered an Avaduta who was traveling about here and there in great transcendental ecstasy and was acting unpredictably, just like someone who has been haunted by a ghost. The king inquired from the holy man about the cause of his wandering and his ecstatic condition, and the Avaduta replied that he had received various instructions from 24 different gurus: the earth, the wind, the sky, the water, fire, and so on. Because of the knowledge he had gained from them, he was able to travel about the earth in a liberated state. From the earth, he had learned how to be sober. And from the two manifestations of earth, namely the mountain and the tree, he had learned respectively how to serve others and how to dedicate one's whole life to the benefit of others. From the wind, manifesting in the form of the vital air within the body, he had learned how to be satisfied with merely keeping oneself alive. And from the external wind, he had learned how to remain uncontaminated by the body and the objects of the senses. From the sky, he had learned how the soul, which pervades all material substances, is both indivisible and imperceptible. And from the water, he had learned how to be naturally clear and purifying. From the fire, he had learned how to devour all things without becoming dirtied, and how to destroy all inauspicious desires of those who make offerings to him. He had also learned from the fire how the Supreme Soul enters into every body and appears to assume the identity of each. From the moon, he had learned how the various phases the material body undergoes, birth, growth, dwindling, and death, do not affect the embodied soul. From the sun, he had learned how to avoid entanglement, even while coming in contact with sense objects. And he had also learned about the two different modes of perception based on seeing the real form of the soul and seeing the false designative coverings. From the pigeon, he had learned how too much affection and excessive attachment are not good for one. This human body is the open door to liberation. But if one becomes attached to family life like the pigeon, one is compared to a person who has climbed up to a high place just to fall down again. Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O greatly fortunate Uddhava, you have accurately revealed my desire to withdraw the Yadu dynasty from the earth and return to my own abode in Vaikuntha. Thus, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all other planetary rulers are now praying for me to resume my residence in Vaikuntha." Purport. Each and every demigod has his particular abode in the heavenly planets within the material universe. Although Lord Vishnu is sometimes counted among the demigods, his abode is in Vaikuntha, the spiritual sky. The demigods are universal controllers within the kingdom of Maya, but Vishnu is the lord of the illusory potency and many other spiritual potencies. His exalted residence does not lie within the kingdom of his insignificant maidservant, Maya. Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, is the supreme Lord of all lords. The demigods are his separated parts and parcels. Being themselves minute jiva souls, the demigods are under the influence of the potency of Maya. But Lord Vishnu is always the supreme controller of Maya. The personality of Godhead is the reservoir and root of all existence. And the material world is just a dim reflection of the brilliant scenery of his eternal spiritual abode, where everything is infinitely beautiful and pleasurable. Vishnu is the supreme reality, and no living entity can ever be equal to or greater than him. The Lord exists within his own unique category called Vishnu Tattva, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All other prominent or extraordinary living entities owe their positions and potencies to the Lord. Ultimately, Vishnu himself is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna, the original source of all Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva expansions. Thus, Lord Krishna is the basis of everything. Text 2. Answering the prayer of Lord Brahma, I descended within this world with my plenary portion, Lord Baladev, and performed various activities on behalf of the demigods. I have now completed my mission here. Text 3. Now, due to the Brahmana's curse, the Yadu dynasty will certainly perish by fighting among themselves. And on the 7th day from today, the ocean will rise up and inundate this city of Dwarka. Purport. In this and the following verses, Lord Krishna indicates to Uddhava that he should immediately fix himself in self-realization by giving up all identification with the material world. Srila Jiva Goswami has pointed out that the Yadu dynasty was not actually destroyed by Lord Krishna, but merely removed from the vision of the world through the curse of the Brahmanas. Similarly, the Lord's eternal abode Dwarka can never be drowned by the ocean. Nevertheless, all external approaches to this transcendental city were covered by the ocean, and thus the Lord's abode remains inaccessible to foolish persons in Kali Yuga, as will be described later in this canto. By the Lord's mystic potency called Yogamaya, he reveals his own form, abode, paraphernalia, pastimes, entourage, and so on. And at the suitable time, he removes all of these from our mundane sight. Although bewildered, conditioned souls may doubt the spiritual potency of the Lord, the pure devotees can directly perceive and relish his transcendental appearance and disappearance, which are described in the Bhagavad Gita as Janma Karma Jame Divyam. If one faithfully accepts this perfect knowledge of the Lord's transcendental nature, then surely one will go back home, back to Godhead, and become an eternal companion of Lord Krishna. Text 4. O saintly Uddhava, in the near future, I will abandon this earth. Then, being overwhelmed by the age of Kali, the earth will be bereft of all piety. Purport. Lord Krishna's plan was to bring Uddhava back to his own eternal abode after a brief delay. Because of Uddhava's extraordinary spiritual qualities, the Lord wanted to engage him in propagating his message among other saintly persons who were not yet advanced to the stage of pure devotional service. However, the Lord assured Uddhava that he would not be bereft of the Lord's association for even a moment. Also, because Uddhava had become a perfect master of his senses, he would never be afflicted by the three modes of material nature. In this way, before bringing Uddhava back home, back to Godhead, the Lord empowered him to carry out a specific, confidential mission. Wherever the supreme position of the personality of Godhead is not recognized, useless mental speculation becomes very prominent. And the safe and sure path of hearing perfect Vedic knowledge becomes covered by the chaos of mental speculation. Shall I hear that? Should we read that again? Okay. Oh, all right. Wherever the supreme position of the personality of Godhead is not recognized, useless mental speculation becomes very prominent. And the safe and sure path of hearing perfect Vedic knowledge becomes covered by the chaos of mental concoction. At the present time, especially in the Western countries, and here we are, literally millions of books are being published on hundreds and thousands of subjects. Yet despite this proliferation of mental concoction, people remain totally in ignorance about the most fundamental issues of human life, namely, who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? What is my soul? What is God? The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is the reservoir of innumerable enchanting pastimes, and thus he is the source of innumerable varieties of pleasure. In fact, he is the ocean of eternal pleasure. When the eternal soul is bereft of the constitutional pleasure that comes from loving service to the Lord, he is overwhelmed and bewildered by material nature. He helplessly chases after material sense gratification, to take birth in Kali Yuga, which is the epitome of misfortune. In Kali Yuga, the living entities who are already suffering so many tribulations mercilessly turn against one another. Human society in Kali Yuga becomes savagely violent, and people open slaughterhouses to butcher hundreds of millions of innocent creatures. Large scale you've got a pandemic coming up, big one, and it's coming, perhaps, it's not sure yet, from the cobra snake that people in China like to eat. And millions of human beings, even women and children, are quickly annihilated. Unless the living entity recognizes the authority of the personality of Godhead, he remains a helpless victim in the clutches of Maya, or material illusion. He concocts different solutions to release himself from Maya, but these solutions are themselves creations of Maya, and thus cannot possibly release the conditioned soul. In fact, they only intensify his distress. To avoid Kali Yuga, in the next verse, Lord Krishna specifically warns Uddhava to avoid Kali Yuga and go back home, back to Godhead. Those of us who have already taken birth in Kali Yuga should also heed this advice and immediately take all necessary steps to go back to the Lord's eternal abode for a blissful life of perfect knowledge. The material world is never a happy place, especially during the fearful days of Kali Yuga. Text 5. My dear Uddhava, you should not remain here on earth once I have abandoned this world. My dear devotee, you are sinless, but in Kali Yuga, the people will be addicted to all types of sinful activities. Therefore, do not stay here. A little pointed advice. Purport. In this age of Kali, human beings are totally unaware that the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes personally to the earth to manifest his transcendental pastimes as they are enacted in the spiritual world. Heedless of the authority of the personality of Godhead. The fallen souls of Kali Yuga become engulfed in bitter quarrel and cruelly harass one another. Because people in Kali Yuga are addicted to polluted, sinful activities. They are always angry, lusty, and frustrated. In Kali Yuga, the devotees of the personality of Godhead, who are engaged in an ever-increasing loving service of the Lord, should never be attracted to living on the earth, the population of which is covered in the darkness of ignorance and devoid of any loving relationship with the Lord. Thus Lord Krishna advised Uddhava not to remain on the earth in Kali Yuga. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord advises all living entities that they should never remain anywhere within the material universe during any age. Therefore, every living being should take advantage of the pressures of Kali Yuga to understand the overall useless nature of the material world and surrender himself at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Following in the footsteps of Sri Uddhava, one should surrender to Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. Text 6. Now you should completely give up all attachment to your personal friends and relatives and fix your mind on me. Thus, being always conscious of me, you should observe all things with equal vision and wander throughout the earth. Purport. Srimad Viraraghava Acharya has explained the concept of equal vision as follows. Samadrik sarvasya brahmat makat va nusandhana rupa sama drishtiman. One who is on the path of self-realization should endeavor to see the ultimate spiritual nature of all existence. The word mayi in this verse means paramatmani. One should fix one's mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of everything. Thus, as one passes one's life on earth, using up one's allotted time, one should practice seeing all things and all people as part and parcel of the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead. Since all living entities are part and parcel of Krishna, ultimately they all have the same spiritual status. The material nature, also being an emanation of Krishna, has a similar spiritual status. But although matter and spirit are both emanations from the personality of Godhead, they do not exist exactly on the same level. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the spirit soul is the superior energy of the Lord, whereas the material nature is his inferior energy. However, since Lord Krishna is equally present in all things, the word samadrik in this verse indicates that one must ultimately see Krishna within everything, and everything within Krishna. Thus, equal vision is compatible with mature knowledge of the varieties present within this world. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows on this verse. At the end of his manifest pastimes on earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna thought as follows within his mind. During my pastimes on the earth, I have satisfied the desires of all those devotees who anxiously desire to see me. I have duly married many thousands of queens, headed by Rukmini, whom I personally kidnapped, and I have killed innumerable demons in various places and by various means. I have attended meetings, reunions, and ceremonies with many friends, relatives, and well-wishers in cities such as Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, Hastinapur, and Mithila. And thus I have kept constantly busy, coming and going in the performance of pastimes. I further arranged to give my personal association to great devotees who were situated below the earthly planet, In order to please my mother Devaki and return her 6 deceased sons who were killed by Kamsa, I descended to the planet Sutala and blessed my great devotee Bali Maharaj. In order to return the dead son of my spiritual master, Sandipani Muni, I personally went to the court of Ravindanandana or Yamaraj, Ravinandana or Yamaraj, and thus he was able to see me face to face. I even blessed the residents of heaven, such as Mother Aditi and Kashyapa Muni, with my personal association when I traveled there to steal the Parijata flower from my wife, Satyabhama. And in order to please the inhabitants of Mahavishnu's abode, such as Nanda, Sunanda, and Sudarshana, I traveled to Mahavaikuntha Loka to recover the deceased children of a frustrated Brahmana. Thus, innumerable devotees who ardently desired to see me have received the object of their prayers. Unfortunately, Narayan Rishi and the great Paramahansa sages who live with him in Badrik Ashram, although most enthusiastic to see me, never had their desire fulfilled. I have been on the earth for 125 years, and the scheduled time is now up. Being busily engaged in my pastimes, I did not have time to give my blessings to these great sages. Nevertheless, Uddhava is practically the same as me. He is a great devotee and shares my own transcendental opulences. Thus, he is the right person for me to send to Badrik Ashram. I shall give Uddhava complete transcendental knowledge, by which one becomes detached from the material world, and he in turn can deliver this knowledge, the science of transcending the kingdom of illusion, to the worthy sages of Badrik Ashram. In this way, he can teach them the method of rendering loving devotional service to my lotus feet. Such loving devotional service rendered to me is the most valuable treasure, and by hearing such knowledge, the desires of the great sages, such as Narayan, will be completely fulfilled. Those great souls who have surrendered unto me are always equipped with transcendental knowledge and detachment from the material world. Sometimes, being busy in their devotional service, they may appear to forget me. However, a pure devotee who has achieved the platform of love for me will always be protected by such sincere devotion. Even if such a devotee should suddenly give up his life while neglecting to fix his mind intensely on me, such a devotee's loving feelings are so powerful that they afford him all protection. Even if there is a temporary moment of forgetfulness, such devotion will bring the devotee to my lotus feet, which are beyond the vision of ordinary materialistic persons. Uddhava is my pure devotee. Knowledge of me and detachment from this world have again been aroused in him because he can never give up my association. The sincere servants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are vigorously endeavoring to spread this Krishna consciousness movement for the pleasure of their spiritual master and Lord Krishna. At the present time, thousands of devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement in all parts of the world are working long hours under difficult conditions to distribute transcendental literature and thus enlighten the general populace. In this effort, the devotees have no personal motivation, but are simply desirous of pleasing their spiritual master by distributing his books. The people who receive this literature usually have no previous experience of Krishna consciousness, yet they are so impressed by the purity of the devotees they meet that they eagerly purchase the books and magazines. Take notes. In order to execute the tremendous task of spreading Krishna consciousness, the devotees are tirelessly laboring day and night because they are on the platform of loving devotion. Although superficially, such busy devotees may occasionally not think directly of the lotus feet of Krishna, such loving devotion will undoubtedly take them to Krishna's lotus feet. And being pleased by their service, the Lord Himself will again arouse their unflinching meditation upon His personal form. This is the beauty of Bhakti Yoga. This is the beauty of Bhakti Yoga, which depends wholly and solely on the mercy of the all-merciful personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This is the only totally safe means of uprooting the deep desires for material enjoyment, attaining pure love for Krishna, and going beyond the material universe to the kingdom of God. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2:40, Neha Vikkamanasyosti Pratyabayo Navidyate Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. Lord Krishna also advised Uddhava in this verse to give up the illusory attachment to so-called friends and family within this material world. One may not be able to physically give up association with family and friends, but one should understand that everyone and everything is part and parcel of God and is meant for the pleasure of God. As soon as one thinks, this is my personal family, immediately one will see the material world as no more than a place for enjoying family life. As soon as one is attached to one's so-called family, false prestige and material possessiveness arise. Actually, everyone is part and parcel of God, and therefore on the spiritual platform, related to all other entities. This is called Krishna Sambandha, or the constitutional relationship with Krishna. It is not possible to advance to the highest stage of spiritual awareness and at the same time maintain a petty material concept of society, friendship, and love. One should experience all relationships on the higher spiritual platform of Krishna Sambandha, which means seeing everything in relation to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. One who is situated in his constitutional relationship with Krishna can see all things in relation to Krishna. He thus gives up the mundane urges of the body, mind, and speech, and travels throughout the earth to Minnesota as a devotee of the Lord. Had to get that one in. What can I say? Had to sneak that one in. Abaya's going up to visit his parents for a week tomorrow. That was just a, what can I say? It was a natural little shot of, what is that called? Inoculation. Such a highly elevated personality is called Goswami, or master of the senses. This stage is described in the Bhagavad Gita 1854 by the words Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. On the spiritual platform, one attains complete satisfaction. What a purport! You should read this every Sunday to the Sunday feast lecture. This should be the Sunday feast lecture every Sunday for at least a year, so that everybody can get the point. Oh, Christian, that was a fantastic. I got to let that sit in for a second. Huh? That was really a fantastic purport. And at the end, he said you don't have to physically give them up, but you have to give up attachment for them and see them as belonging to Krishna. It's such a beautiful formula, practical. Text 7. My dear Uddhava, the material universe that you perceive through your mind, speech, eyes, ears, and other senses is an illusory creation that one imagines to be real due to the influence of Maya. In fact, you should know that all of the objects of the material senses are temporary. Purport. The question may be raised that since we find good and bad qualities throughout the material world, how can Lord Krishna advise Uddhava to see everything equally? In this verse, Krishna explains that material good and evil are a creation of the illusory energy, just as the objects of a dream are a mental creation. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Vasudevak Savamiti, Lord Krishna is actually everything because he is present within everything, and everything is present within him. Krishna is Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, the Lord and proprietor of all worlds. To see anything separate from Krishna is illusion, and attraction to any kind of material illusion, either good or bad, is ultimately useless, since it obliges the living entity to continue wandering in the cycle of birth and death. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching constitute the activities of the 5 knowledge-gathering senses. Similarly, the voice, the hands, the legs, the anus, and the genitals constitute the 5 working senses. These 10 senses are organized around the mind, which is the center of material activity. When the living entity desires to exploit matter, he is covered by the 3 modes of nature. Thus he concocts different philosophical, political, and social explanations of reality, but never understands the absolute truth, Lord Krishna, who is beyond the contaminated perception of the material senses. One who is entangled in the network of material designations, such as race, nationality, sectarian religion, political affiliation. Wow, tell that to what is McConnell? One who is entangled in the network of material designations, such as race, nationality, sectarian religion, political affiliation, etc., is absorbed in the experience of combining his body and other bodies with material sense objects, thinking these sense objects to be sources of happiness and satisfaction. So unfortunately, the entire material world, along with the senses that experience it, is a temporary creation that will be annihilated by the time potency of the Supreme Lord. Despite our foolish hopes and dreams, there is no actual happiness on the material platform. The real truth is not material, nor is it temporary. The real truth is called Atma, or the eternal soul, and among all eternal souls, one is supreme. He is called the personality of Godhead, and in his original form, he is known as Krishna. The knowledge-gathering process culminates in perception of the inconceivable, transcendental form. One who is not perceiving Krishna in everything, and everything in Krishna, is undoubtedly on the platform of mental concoction. In this verse, Lord Krishna warns Uddhava to remain clear of this illusory platform of existence. Text 8. One whose consciousness is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and performance of forbidden activities. Purport. The illusory mental platform of existence is described in this verse. The word ayuktasya indicates the conditioned soul who does not fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature that Lord Krishna, the Absolute Truth, is within everything, and everything is within the Lord. The example may be given that when a woman loves a man, she is most eager to see him, and she daily sees him dressed in different clothes. Actually, the woman is interested not in the clothes, but in the man. Similarly, within every material object is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one who has developed the love of God is constantly seeing the Lord everywhere, and not just the superficial material objects that cover the Lord. The word ayuktasya in this verse indicates one who has not come to the stage of reality. Such a person, being deprived of loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, attempts to enjoy the innumerable forms and flavors of material experience. This temporary, illusory engagement is not the constitutional function of the bewildered living entity, who remains without any awareness of the ultimate reality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Within the world of matter, there are undoubtedly varieties. Among dogs, there are pedigree poodles and common mutts, and among horses, there are thoroughbreds and old gray mares. Similarly, some human beings are beautiful and educated, and others are dull and homely. Some are rich, and some are poor. In nature, we find fertile land and sterile land, lush forests and useless deserts, invaluable gems and colorless stones, flowering transparent rivers and stagnant dirty ponds. In human society, we find happiness and distress, love and hate, victory and defeat, war and peace, life and death, and so on. However, we do not have any permanent relationship with any of these conditions, because we are eternal spirit souls, part and parcel of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic culture is arranged in such a way that everyone can become perfect in self-realization simply by performing his occupation of duty for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sway sway karman abhidatak sangsidib labate naraha. Some conditioned souls, however, believe that complete perfection in life may be achieved by performing ordinary non-spiritual duties on behalf of family, nation, humanity, and so on. Others are interested in neither service to God nor noble mundane activities, and there are others who actively pursue sinful life. Such sinful persons generally rise from bed late in the afternoon and stay awake all night, taking intoxicants and engaging in illicit sex. Such a dark, hellish existence is caused by attraction to tamoguna, the mode of ignorance. The mode of ignorance. Actions in the mode of ignorance, just one second, sorry. Actions in the mode of ignorance are called vikarma, as mentioned in this verse. Unfortunately, neither the materially responsible person, nor the materially irresponsible person, nor the sinful person can achieve the real perfection of life. Krishna consciousness. Although different societies and different individuals maintain different concepts of good and evil, all material things are ultimately useless in terms of our eternal self-interest, which is Krishna consciousness. This idea is expressed by the saintly king Chitraketu in the 6th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, 6:17:20. We'll let Conchal of Maya go by. Pretty nice, huh? Pretty nice. Never read a clear explanation like this of what's going on anywhere practically. Bye. Guna pravaha etasmin kakshapa ko anugraha kaksvargo naraka kova kim sukam dukhameva va. This material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness and what is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. The argument may be given that since in the Vedas there are prescribed and forbidden activities, the Vedas also accept the concept of good and evil within the material world. The fact is, however, that it is not the Vedas themselves, but the conditioned souls who are bound up in material duality. The function of Vedic literature is to engage each individual at the particular level on which he is personally situated and gradually elevate him to the perfection of life. The material mode of goodness is not itself spiritual, but it does not impede spiritual life. Since the material mode of goodness purifies one's consciousness and creates a hankering for higher knowledge, it is a favorable platform from which to pursue spiritual life, just as the airport is a favorable place from which to travel or get blown up in. If a man, excuse me, that was my edit, don't mind. Yeah. If a man desires to travel from New York to London, the New York airport is certainly the most favorable place from which to travel. But if a man misses his plane, he is no closer to London than anyone in New York who did not go to the airport. Such brilliant logic. I got to read that again. This is too good. If a man desires to travel from New York to London, the New York airport is certainly the most favorable place from which to travel. But if the man misses his plane, he is no closer to London than anyone in New York City who did not go to the airport. In other words, the advantage of the airport is meaningful only if one catches his plane. Similarly, the material mode of goodness is the most favorable situation from which to move up to the spiritual platform. The Vedas prescribe and forbid activities to lift the conditioned soul to the material mode of goodness, and from that point, he should rise to the spiritual platform by transcendental knowledge. Therefore, if one does not come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, his elevation to the material mode of goodness is useless, just as a trip to the airport is useless for one who misses his plane. In the Vedas, there are injunctions and prohibitions that appear to accept good and evil among material things. But the ultimate purpose of the Vedic regulations is to create a favorable situation for spiritual life. If one can immediately take to spiritual life, then there is no need to waste time with rituals within the mode of nature. Therefore, Krishna advises Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita 2:45, Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtrigunasto, Niryoga Chema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya has quoted the following verses from Mahabharata. Swargadyas cha gunak sarve doshat sarvatataiva cha atmana kartrita brantya jayante natra samshayaha. Within the material world, the conditioned souls consider residence on the heavenly planets and celestial pleasures, such as the pious enjoyment of beautiful women, to be good and desirable things. Similarly, painful or miserable conditions are considered to be evil or bad. However, all such perception of good and bad in the material world is undoubtedly based upon the fundamental mistake of considering oneself and not the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be the ultimate doer or performer of all actions. Paramatmanam ekaikam evaikam kartaram vidiyak puman samuchite smat sama samsarat paramatmanam iticha. On the other hand, a person who knows that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the actual controller of material nature, and that it is ultimately He who is moving everything, can free himself from the bondage of material existence. Such a person goes to the abode of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Okay, that's it for today for the reading, and we'll now turn our attention to the reflections of the Vaishnavas and discussions thereof, or questions that one might have. I mean, that was about as clear an exposition as, I mean, I've read these books a lot, and every time I come to something like that, did I read that before? I did. Why am I not doing that moment to moment? What's wrong with me? Okay, Honest John is going to start us rolling. It's going to start the ball rolling.
The analogy, we'll go to the analogy of the airport.
And
so
I think this was everybody's favorite part.
It's common sense, and I like that. Something that's real. Like, you could be in the mode of goodness, but if you don't take advantage of Krishna consciousness, then you're still in material sense gratification, either good or bad, up or down. You're still here. It doesn't negate anything.
That's why we call you Honest John, because you have a way of saying the simple truth in a very nice way.
Well,
that
was I like that the way he explained it was really good. That could be a good way to just explain it to a common person who really.
Yeah, like I said, this is your Sunday feast lecture. You just sit down and read this every day for a year, or every Sunday for a year, and pray that somebody picks up on it. Why do I say that? I say that because when one is materially nicely situated, you could say in the mode of goodness, or mixed between passion and goodness, you're like, then the tendency is to think, oh, this is it. I've reached the goal, and all these things that we've been learning in these purports, they become swept away by that conception. So that's why it says Traigunya Vishya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjana. Even the mode of goodness is a source of keeping us in the material world. So therefore, devotional service is, or life in the material world before we come to Krishna consciousness, is meant to bring us to the stage of using up our pious and using up our impious results of our activities in the past. So when we are in a good situation, we're actually using up our pious credits, right, to become eligible to go to devotional life or spiritual life. So once we get that vision, then we won't get, because the mode of goodness is actually, in some ways, the most entangling, because it gives one a sense of well-being. It gives one the sense of being better, actually, because those in the mode of goodness are better, in a sense, in one sense. You know, at least they're at the airport. You know, and you just think about going to to London by going to the airport. You don't even go to the airport. I mean, what is it? You know, that's even worse than going to the airport and missing your plane. Or it may seem like not, but it is.
You could be saying, like, I'm at the airport, you know, like boasting about it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm at the airport.
That's what's happening.
You know, it's like,
that's what all these philosophers.
So what?
So what? You know what they call? I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but kind of keep track of what was going on in the trial of our president. You know, the impeachment trial. And there was a kind of like an invocation at the beginning, because it's in the Senate, you know, and it said, the Senate is the highest deliberative body on the earth. Some ridiculous statement like that. And they sit there and they just refuse to listen to the truth. They refuse to change their mind, even if it's like the arguments are good. So even if you get to a high position like that, you can get just, you know, fixed in illusion, even easier in some senses. Because you get a sense of being powerful, you get a sense of being, you know, better than others, you get a sense of being okay. And then you just stay there. That's like going to the airport, you know, and being there, you know, and rather than missing your plane, just watching it fly off, you know. You're sitting in the, you know, that, what do they call that? The gate. You're sitting at the gate, you know, you're thinking about going to London, and, you know, and everybody goes on, and you're thinking about going to London, you're thinking about going to London, and all of a sudden they close the gate. Wait, no, I have to go. No, I'm sorry, that's the rule, you know. It's time, the gate closes, that's it.
I feel like sometimes that's what we're doing. Sometimes I do that. It's like I'm contemplating, you know, going to London, and I'm just sitting there watching the planes go by. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And I'm just sitting
Exactly. Exactly.
One of these days I'd like to do that.
Exactly. And therefore there's a verse that kind of says that. What is that verse? I don't know. Maybe you can help me with the Sanskrit. That talks about how argument, talking back and forth, the munis, tarko pratishtam, shutiya, bibina. Yeah, tarko pratishtam, shutiya, bibina. The arguers, the philosophers, they argue back and forth, and they never really get it. And then mahajano yena gata sapanta, the truth is actually residing in the heart of a self-realized soul. So if you go to a self-realized soul, that's what we're doing. We're sitting here all together listening to self-realized souls. It is so profound. Go ahead. You're on a roll. Keep on going.
I was reading in the Nectar of Devotion, so much, there's so much in there about listening to Srimad-Bhagavatam in the company of devotees, and that is like one of the highest forms of, I mean, they talk about it a lot in the book about this is the way to go. So it's like this is probably one of the best things we could do to get to London by sitting here listening to the Srimad-Bhagavatam.
There's two things. There's chanting together the holy name, or chanting your japa. Don't think that it's less. Don't think that it's less. Please. When we take initiation, we make a vow, and the vows is to chant minimum of 16 rounds every day. We don't take a vow to, I mean, we want to do everything that Prabhupada wanted us to do, but the vows are the minimum 16 rounds. Trying to avoid offenses, and hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the company of devotees. But even that, the japa is not, I don't know, maybe it's not. This is why your spiritual master has started this japa circle recently. You know, by Shikabru, he's really, really innovative in his approach to getting people to do what's it says, rather than just like he's saying, just thinking about it, thinking about it. That'll be nice. I'll do that, and then first I'll do this, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do that. So the japa and avoiding offenses means following the regulated principles. And in that consciousness, when you hear, you know, the Bhagavatam in the company of devotees, that's it. There's that section of in the famous 7th canto verse, 7, 5, 24, 20. Yeah, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and where Prabhupada each 9 types of devotional service, he gives an explanation and very long purport, very long, because he analyzes each one. And in the first one, hearing, in the first sentence of the first paragraph of that explanation, it starts Shravanam, and it says that the chanting of the holy name is essential and necessary and highest. And then in this first sentence in the next paragraph, and it said, and Srimad-Bhagavatam, hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam, is considered to be the most important. So it may seem confusing, because one says this is most important and this is most important. But if you have the capacity, the spiritual intelligence, to adjust, contextualize, then you'll see that both of those things are equally important. And that's the basis of all other spiritual, devotional service. Without those things, the other services are not actually complete. And with those things, any one of the items of devotional service is complete. You can go back to Godhead just by hearing, or just by praying, or just by serving, or just by giving up everything. By explaining. Chanting also means explaining. Who was I saying this to the other day? I was saying it to somebody, that Prabhupada said, hearing and explaining is better than reading. Because by hearing and explaining, you realize the philosophy. Okay, who's up? I'm starting to hog the show again. Yes, Prana, take us further.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on this, how the material mode of goodness, one may be attached to that. Even as devotees, neophyte devotees, we are attached to that because it offers a sense of peace and comfort. The distress from the material world is lessened, and so we kind of feel like that's a nice comfort zone, the material mode of goodness. But spiritual activities, sometimes then one who's conditioned by that sense of comfort in the material mode of goodness, we myself included, may view the variegated spiritual activities in this movement to be rajasic, or they shy away from being busily engaged in Krishna's service because they consider it not as actually a high state of being, as just being kind of comfortable in their own peace of mind.
Oh, really? So what's the missing ingredient?
For them to see that, or The missing
what's
ingredient.
what's the missing ingredient that doesn't allow them to see the variegated activities of the spreading of Krishna consciousness to be more elevated than just sitting peacefully and being in goodness?
I think, I mean, just to answer off the top of my head would be just what you kind of said was this hearing and explaining.
The missing ingredient is the pleasure of Krishna and the pleasure of the spiritual master and the pleasure of the Vaishnavas. That's the missing ingredient. If you aren't doing what you're doing, even if you're doing, varnashram duties perfectly, okay, got the purport. It's right here. 248. Bhagavad Gita. Last paragraph. Purport. 248. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and as such he is participating in the Varnashram Dharma institution. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that in the Varnashram Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as is the rule in the material world. But one should satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Indirectly, Arjuna was advised to act as Krishna told him. And what's the verse that Prabhupada told Guru Kripa was the most important verse? Guru Kripa was one of the devotees that first started to memorize verses. He was really good at it. He had almost the whole Gita memorized before anybody did. And so he asked, Prabhupada asked him, to teach him, so what's your favorite verse? And then he immediately said, Hariranama, Hariranama, Hariranama eva kevalam, kalo naste. This is, what's the word? Symbolic of what goes on sometimes. Prabhupada said, no. Yasya devi pura bhaktir, yata tevi tata guru, tasyaite katitaryate prakashante mahatmana. For one who has full faith in Krishna and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are revealed within the heart of that person. That's the missing ingredient. That's why Bharat Maharaj fell down, even though he attained bhava, or close to bhava. He wasn't doing it for the pleasure of the spiritual master and Krishna. And if you don't do that, then you forget. That's the nature of the material world. That's what that whole, that series of verse purports were saying. I mean, my God, how much clearer can it be?
And that seems to be the cause of the unsteadiness, is because when it's good for me, then I'm doing devotional activity. But then when I don't like it, or it's uncomfortable, or then I go away.
What are those three verses? What are the three verses that you're referring to in the Gita? Renunciation in the mode of ignorance, renunciation in the mode of passion, renunciation in the mode of goodness. Renunciation in the mode of goodness, that passion is that you don't do it because it's troublesome. You don't do your duties because they're troublesome, and you renounce based on that. It doesn't last. It can't. What you said was really good. It doesn't stand. It doesn't become fixed. These ideas are cut into the chase, as they say. This is cut into the chase. The root cause of our material conditioning, and the root cause of our elevation. And it's very simple. but because it's covered by all these philosophical, like, I like the part, just my reflection of what we just read, I like that section where it talked about how many books are being published every day. Like now it's like with the internet, they're publishing like literally thousands of books every day, thousands. You can go into some libraries and you can find, 9 million books. And Gopi said, he jokes about this because he graduated from Columbia University and it has a big library. He said, so you can go and stick your nose in all those books, or try to stick your nose in all these books and see what comes out. Nothing. You won't get anything, because they're all just, speculations. They're all meditating on temporary things. Phantasmagoria. Yes, Patrick.
I was actually going to read that paragraph where it was speaking about that.
Oh, please do. Let's hear it again, and again, and again, and again.
All right.
You got to put it down to yourself. You're reading I don't, Sorry. That's close enough.
Wherever the supreme position of the personality of Godhead is not recognized, useless mental speculation becomes very prominent. And the safe and sure path of hearing perfect Vedic knowledge becomes covered by the chaos of mental concoction. At the present time, especially in the Western countries, literally millions of books are being published on hundreds and thousands of subjects. Yet despite this proliferation of mental concoction, people remain totally in ignorance about the most fundamental issues of human life, namely, who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? What is my soul? What is God? And this kind of brought to mind that we look out and we can see all of our civilizations are built on these mental concoctions, looking for our happiness or looking for that fulfilling aspect of life. But over hundreds and thousands of years, we've seen that it's not in any of these things that we've built or done.
It's
right
going
here.
somewhere. It's going somewhere. It's just going to the wrong place. Like that story that I can't remember. I think it was either Prabhupada or maybe it was Sridharananda Maharaj, because this is a great analogy he did about the airport. I mean, that was fantastic. He was talking about how this man lost the keys to his car, and he had a really important engagement that was going to make his life or break it, and he just lost the keys to his car, and he was down on the ground and he was frantically looking for the keys in his car. So his friend walks by, and the friend goes, "What's wrong?" He says, "I lost the keys to my car and I got this appointment and this is it. If I don't make it to this appointment, I'm finished." So he says, "Really, can I help you?" Yeah, please. And he says, "So where was the last place that you remember you had it?" He says, "About 500 yards down that way." And he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" He said, "There was no lamp down there. There's a lamppost here so I can see what I'm doing." Looking in the wrong place. Okay, 7:30, that's it. I'll turn into a pumpkin if I go past 7:30 tonight, because we're maybe going to finish the Chaitanya Charitamrita tomorrow. Hare Krishna. And then, of course, Rasika still has a lot of editing to do, but this means that by the end of the year, it's possible it'll be finished and maybe come out first of next year or by mid next year. Then we can wire your truck up and you can be hearing like this all the time. But be careful, it may take you out of the material world.
I wouldn't be worried about it then. So the driver's right.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect way to do your service and at the same time be transcendental. Okay, Uddhava Gita ki jai. Sri Krishna's instruction to Uddhava ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. See you tomorrow night, same place, same time, same station. Live studios here in Radha Lane, Houston, Texas. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Hari Bol.